What's going on, everyone? I'm Travis Brown with the Eagle alongside Robert Cessna. But most importantly, we have Matt Baker from the Tampa Bay Times here. Matt, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Awesome, awesome. Well, A&M faces Florida this weekend. The beat that you cover, one of the beats that you cover. Let's just get into the nitty gritty of what are the biggest storylines and notes heading into this matchup between the Aggies and the Gators.
Yeah, I'm just kind of curious to see how the Gators respond from the Georgia loss. They've been in a couple competitive games with good teams this year. Obviously, Tennessee, it was a 17-point game with 7 minutes left or so, and Florida went down and had a chance for a Hail Mary to win it at the very end. We're down really big early against Georgia on Saturday, came back, and suddenly in the third quarter with 3.5 minutes left, it's a one-score game. So I want to see if Florida can kind of build on that and in a positive way and go from kind of close calls against some of these teams to actually having a chance to win it. And then just kind of big picture with the Gators, I want to see what kind of incremental progress they make. This season has not gone the way that diehard fans hope, but truthfully, it's gone about the way I expected, where they're good enough to hang with just about anybody, but good enough to, or bad enough to lose to just about anybody. So I want to see what kind of little incremental progress the Gators can make to give fans either optimism or concern heading into 23, because that's really what most Florida fans are thinking about right now.
It's interesting you should say that, Matt, because obviously by covering A&M, you don't get to see a lot of Florida, but I did see most of the Utah game. I'm a voter. I checked these games against, Kentucky. You're right, LSU even. They play all these competitive games, and I think for a first-year coach, that's good, but fans do want the wins. And then I'm on the outside looking in, and they lose one of their top linebackers, Cox. So I wonder, what's the pulse this week when you lose such a good player?
Yeah, that's a really good question in terms of what happened with Brenton Cox, who was dismissed from the team the other day. And I'm not entirely sure what to make of it. I think in some ways, this is probably Billy Napier sending a little bit of a message in terms of what's accepted and what is not accepted. Billy didn't phrase it like that when we asked him about it on Monday, but I still think there probably is some of that as well, especially when one of the big things with him, he's of the Nick, he worked under Nick Saban at Alabama. So he's kind of on that mindset that more games are lost than they are won, if that makes sense. And he, more than probably just about any coach I've covered, is really big on eliminating the dumb mistakes, be that turnovers. I know every coach does that, but Billy's more on that. And bad penalties and stuff like that. Just the self-inflicted things that can ruin a game for a team. And I think discipline is part of that. And it's definitely an area where Florida people will tell you that was a lacking thing under the last regime and Dan Mullen. And so far, Billy's trying to change that. And I think it's hard to view Cox's dismissal the other day not through that lens.
Now, what about, seemed like a few years when A&M would play Auburn, is it going to be good Bo or bad Bo? Now, they don't get to play Florida all the time, but we know that kind of like Anthony Richardson, it would seem like if he has a good game, Florida's chances. What about up and down, or what have you seen from him?
Yeah, so he is tremendously talented. I mean, there's no question in my mind that he is one of the most talented quarterbacks in the country, period. He's big, he's strong, he's fast, he's got a cannon. He has all of the tools, but he has not been able to put it together. Going back to last year under Dan Mullen, he would make these spectacular plays when he'd see a little bit of action against FAU or USF or some of those guys, but wasn't playing consistently. And you kind of had to read between the lines, but he wasn't making the unspectacular plays, is what Dan Mullen liked to say, where sometimes the best thing you can do is check it down for a 3-yard gain to the running back. He didn't do that enough. And this year, he is still making some of those great plays. He had some sensational ones against Utah, ripped off an 80-yard play with his legs against LSU the other day. Big passing touchdown against Georgia to Xavier Henderson. But I guess where I'm seeing progress is eliminating some of the really bad things, raising the floor a little bit, where 2 consecutive games without an interception. He's not making some of those just disastrous plays that he made his first year and a half or so of playing time. He's leveling out a little bit. That is that good enough for the Gators? No, not if they're going to be the team they want to be. But if, as we look at this team, that a bowl game is a realistic possibility and a realistic goal. If they're going to get there, being just okay is good enough for him at this point.
A&M has struggled this year against mobile quarterbacks, and I know that is a little bit of a skill set of his. How much have they used his legs this season? How much do you think that'll be a factor in a matchup against an A&M team that has not only struggled against mobile quarterbacks, but struggled against run defense in general?
Yeah, that's one of the most interesting questions to me, and it has been throughout the season, is how did they use his legs? Because he is a dynamic runner, absolutely dynamic. I mean, the guys that I've seen that I compare him to, Lamar Jackson, that's probably the list. Maybe Deshaun Watson, maybe Marcus Mariota. But when he is on with his legs, he is just dynamic. And very few guys in the last few, since I've been doing this, are in that sentence. But Florida's tried to be very specific and calculated in how they use him. Some of that is the lack of depth behind him. Jack Miller's the backup quarterback, transferred from Ohio State, doesn't really have any significant playing time. Miller was out for a while, in which case Jalen Kitno was the backup quarterback who had no significant playing time. So Florida's tried to be very cautious because they could not risk an injury to him. That said, they've opened it up a little bit more the last couple weeks. So it's just been kind of a balancing act that Florida has tried to do between using his strength, which is his legs that separates him from almost anybody that I've seen with my own eyes, while also trying to be careful to let him avoid injury, first of all, and then second of all, let him develop as a passer, because that's something he's really, really focused on. It's the quarterback's job is to throw it, so he wants to throw it.
I was interested looking at this week. Florida has some good stats both on defense and offense. I mean, this is, as you say, a very competitive team coming in here that has eyes on a bowl. I remember Montreal Johnson. I saw some of his games last year, the way it worked when Napier and them was over at ULA, whatever. But what are two or three other guys that we might look for that besides Cox and Richardson?
I mean, go with the other running back, Etienne. I mean, he plays a lot like his older brother, the former Clemson star, who's with the Jaguars now. I'm not going to say that he's going to reach that level. I mean, Etienne was one of the best backs in the history of the ACC. So I'm not going to put that unfair expectation on him. But when you watch him, you see that flash, you see that spark, you see that burst that not a lot of backs have. So he's only a freshman, so he's presumably going to get better from here. But he is somebody that when he has the ball in his hands, you can just see that something is different. Javon Dexter, the defensive lineman, is somebody that has early in the offseason was getting kind of first round buzz on the mock drafts that are way, way, way too early. But he's somebody who has the potential to be very disruptive, and we've seen it in flashes. And then the third guy I'd mentioned is Ventrell Miller, the linebacker. He's been banged up this year and banged up throughout his Florida career. But there's been a huge difference between when he's playing and when he's healthy, and when he is banged up and when he's out. He's healthy now. He is a very good with the run, very good in terms of stopping the quarterback, but has been kind of a little bit of a liability in the passing lanes, that trying to defend tight ends and what have you. So he's somebody that A&M fans should be watching as well. Number 51.
Let's close it out with this. Florida will be successful on Saturday if they do these things. What do they need to do to be successful?
First of all, run the ball well. This is Billy Napier's MO is he wants to run the ball and he wants to play action off of that. So if the Gators run the ball well, and I think they will, then that's the first key to success for them. The other thing, whole avoid turnovers, dumb mistakes, all that stuff that every coach says. But the other thing that I would mention is third down defense. The Gators' third down defense is historically bad. I tried to find a Gators defense that was this bad in the history of the program, and I could not do it. The records only went back to like 1979, and they were somewhere around 10 percentage points worse than any Florida defense since 1979. So they are historically bad. If they're going to have a chance of beating A&M, and I do think they have a legitimate chance, they're going to have to find ways to get off the field. It's that simple, because they have not done it consistently. And that's one of the reasons why they're in the situation where they are, where they're just kind of middle in the road instead of being 6-2 with wins over Kentucky and LSU or something like that.
So, Matt, thanks so much for joining us. Let the people know where they can find your work and how they can find you online so they can follow you leading up to the game.
Of course. I'm on Twitter at mbakertbtimes, and our website is tampabay.com.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for giving us a little bit of your time to break down the Gators, and we'll be back with another one of these next week.